Plot, beg, borrow, ellipsis, or steal. 1973. Written by Brian VN at earthlink.net. 3 disabled men, 1 blind, 1 with no legs and 1 with no hands, get together to pull off a museum robbery. Voiceover off.
When you're blind and watching movies, what will you find? A blind superhero whose superpowers are acting like he's not blind. A sighted actor over dramatically touching people's faces. Or maybe the whole joke is that they're bumping into different places. A spectacular, macular generation. Tunnel vision to your television until they off this movie with audio descriptions. They're movie buffs who know their stuff. You'll be thoroughly entertained. Join Sky and Melissa throughout film history and Citizen White Cane.
Hello,
Hi.
and welcome to Citizen White Cane, the podcast where two confused disabled people break into the world of blind media critique, take the precious gems, then are forced to give them back when they turn out to be problematic. My name is Sky McLeod.
I'm Melissa Bacta.
And we are talking today about beg, borrow, ... or steal, which I guess how to say that is like beg, borrow, or steal, maybe.
Or steal. Yeah.
That's my best attempt at the inflection of the title. But it is a hour long, or it's a little over an hour. It's 1973 made for television movie about 3 disabled people who rob a museum. So
Yes.
where to start with this one? I guess some overview, or how do we feel about it? I don't know.
I mean, that's basically the summary of the movie. And this movie, we don't learn a whole lot about everything that happens around this event necessarily, or the people who decide to commit this crime. I mean, we meet them, and it's honestly, it's kind of like an Ocean's 11, but for disabled people.
It is, yeah. I was watching this with my partner, and he kept talking about what if Ocean's 11 was just disabled people, or what if they did, instead of all women, they just did disabled people, but has to be dudes, because you can't have too many. Different
chicks can't just do this.
Yeah, it can't be disabled women, though that would be so much cooler.
I know,
than anything else that's ever happened.
And I mean, forgive me, the only way during the movie that I could tell the 3 dudes apart is what their disabilities were, because they're all white and they all have black curly hair, and I'm like, they all look big. I can't tell.
It's funny. I feel like they had enough of a different facial shape that I had. It was really easy, and their hair was a different shape. But that might be the way my eyes work. That was easy for me to tell the difference because of that. But yeah, they did. You could tell because one of them has no hands at all.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And one of them is in a wheelchair, and then the other one is blind. Because we're talking about it, so one of them's got to be blind.
Yes.
And I kind of like that in this movie, the villain at the beginning is actually ableism, which I feel like is rarely the case.
Yeah, I was really surprised because I wasn't exactly sure how we were going to get to the plot of these guys needing to commit a museum heist, and I was like, oh wow, this is actually completely. Unfortunately, these guys wanting to rob a museum seems incredibly rational, considering all of the stuff that we have to go through as disabled people just to get money.
Right. It was actually
or survive.
It was so real, because it was you can play up weird disability, oh, this is what I think it probably is, the problems, but it's no, it was all, they seemed like they were just getting by just fine. They weren't oh my gosh, we're pining because we're disabled, but they were we're having job discrimination. Like we see that the dude in the wheelchair can't get a loan because they don't trust him to be able to make money.
Right.
And we have the guy with no hands is fired from his job, and like to the point that he sees his boss talking to his boss's boss, or like they're talking, and he's like, oh, that's me
Right.
getting fired, basically, because I'm not doing, because I'm working too slowly. This is what always happens. And he just like grabs his coat, like, he's like, I'm out of here. Yeah.
That was really funny, because that's actually not, I can't say I've been in that exact situation, but I've been in a situation adjacent to that. Like, that's why I quit one of my jobs in college. It was for that reason.
Because it was
finally
just
my boss. It was just not good working conditions. And my boss finally comes up to me and he like takes me aside and he's like, so you're really slow and I don't know what to do with you.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, cool.
Wow.
That's my cue. I need to not work here anymore. And luckily, that's when my volunteer job at the radio station became a paid position. So I was like, yes, I'm in a place where I fit. Yeah. But yeah, no, I've literally had that happen, and it's embarrassing, and you feel so defeated. And I felt for Cliff in that moment, because the other guy who he's working with was like, stay, you're not going to get fired. You do such good work. Like, it's fine. You're doing fine. But he has two hands and he's abled. And so he's probably never gone through something like that before.
Gosh, wait, so what kind of job was the
I worked,
for you? Yeah.
Well, actually, coincidentally, my job was also working with computers, just like they were working with.
Well, they weren't was it computers? It was like electrician-y stuff, but I couldn't really see what they were working on. It's the 70s.
I couldn't either, because this was the 70s, yeah. I saw tall towers with wires, and I was like, they're working on computers, but they probably weren't, because it's the 70s. Well, okay, fine. So we were not working at the same job, but essentially it was a similar situation.
Was it like computer repair stuff, or
some of it was. I never actually got to take anything apart because I couldn't do that work. But I was like a troubleshooter. I did work in labs. I did maintenance on computers.
Blind people are the best troubleshooters. I believe that strongly. I've worked in similar jobs. We can do that. Oh, that sucks.
But this was a job that no adaptations were made.
Right, of course. So then what do you do?
It was the worst. And I gave up a really great job to do that job. So that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I really felt for Cliff though. So it's funny because like I wasn't even mad that these guys decided to heist, because usually I'd be on the museum side because I love museums, and you should never ever do something like this, never ever. And yet I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Take it. You guys deserve it.
I know. I was like, because we have these two guys are already in the beginning are already kind of like have that kind of working to like near the beginning, the guy with no hands and the guy in the wheelchair are like basically casing the museum to like see how everything works, because what is the character in the wheelchair's name?
Oh, Vic, like Victor.
Yeah,
but everyone calls him Vic.
Yeah, like Vic Vapor Rub. Oh my gosh, words. But yeah, so Vic was the one who like basically designed the security at the museum before he was in a wheelchair, and then once he was in a wheelchair, they basically were like, you can't work here anymore, and he can't get his job back because he's disabled. So. Which is like, it was weirdly, I was like, this is like legit real. Like this is very it felt very real in a way that usually movies are not very good at like encapsulating what ableism looks like. He's designed the security system, so he is like a very good person to be the mastermind behind this because he knows how it all works.
Yeah.
And then the guy with no hands has Cliff. He's an electrician, so that's his thing. I guess that's kind of his main vibes, but but he is able to get a key from he drops a key, and then he's able to get it from a little vent or what is it called,
Oh, the grate and the floor.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a handful. Oh well, there's a few things that they're like. I mean, it's kind of fun when they do stuff where like you're able to use like at one point when they have to climb, it like when the heist is actually happening. Vic needs to like actually go up multiple stories on a rope to get into the building, and so he's like practicing to have like upper arm strength, and then like also probably because he's not using his legs, this is something that Conrad pointed out. He's like, yeah, your legs are probably atrophy enough that you would be lighter overall. So like having more upper body strength and being lighter because of like leg atrophy, and you're like, oh yeah, I could see how that would actually kind of help in like doing that.
That's a really good point.
It was, which I was like terrified. I'm glad that the blind guy didn't have to do that, because I'd be like, oh my god, that would scare the fuck out of me. But that's just because I'm afraid of heights, not because I'm blind necessarily. So there's like with the blind guy, do we really see his blindness, I guess, is like when they turn off the lights in the room where he's like disabling things. He's able to still do just the same in the darkness as he was in the light. But yeah, so anyway, the two of them, like, it's originally just Vic and Cliff who are planning the heist, but then okay, so what's our blind character's name, Melissa?
Uh-oh. His name, they say it a couple times, but I honestly never caught his name.
Let me see, I have the IMDb open. So his character name is Lester.
Yates. See, they say it like twice in the entire movie.
Yeah, I don't remember them saying it at all, because that's my grandfather's name, and I think I would have not the blind grandfather. Actually, it's the other grandfather.
Right.
I have a blind grandfather and I have a grandfather named Lester. So I should have. I feel like I would have. They might have called him Les, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
But even I guess like, I would have made, but. I feel like I never fully clocked what his name was, because they must have said, like, Les is a name you can say, like, I know that's because that's my grandfather would be called Les just as often, so, like, it isn't, I know that's how to shorten it, but it could have just been that Les is a kind of name that could get, like, lost in a sentence, so I might have just not caught it. Well,
now that we have their names in front of us, we should probably note that Victor Cummings, our gentleman in a wheelchair, he's played by Mike Connors. Lester Yates, which is our blind guy, is played by Kent McCord. And Cliff Norris, the one who uses prosthetic hands, is played by Michael Cole.
Yes, thank you.
That
was good.
You're welcome.
So Lester is our blind character here, and he is he works at a key, like a key shop. What is this called? He's like a locksmith.
A locksmith shop, exactly.
But it's weird. We don't really see that being used, I don't think.
No, he's mostly working on getting into the fuse box to disable all the fuses and stuff.
Which is kind of what, like, Cliff's whole thing is in his job, so it doesn't really make much sense. I don't understand why that happened. But
I mean, Lester seems to have like the least to do out of all three of these guys.
Well, because he also he joins after the fact, because they're basically keeping it from him for the beginning of the movie, which it is kind of cool that the three of them, you know, they're not related or anything, and they're all living together in a house. It's like, it is kind of cute. Like, I really liked that part of it. It's like a very kind of, you know, I don't know, Island of Misfit Toys, like, chosen family thing.
Yeah, that, and it's kind of like, eventually, disabled folks will find each other and make their own little communities and stuff.
But it is a really nice thing. It's like it's like with freaks that it's always a little bit of a, I'm just like, yeah, I love this. But so they're living together, keeping it, and then we have this scene where Lester is like, don't silence to a blind man, because they're like passing a note to each other about the robbery, which is like really weird behavior. But Lester as a character is just I don't know, he's kind of a wet blanket. He's very nondescript. What do we think of him? I feel like he's like such a square, where I was like, I think blind people would not, like, he is way more of a square than I feel like most of the blind people I know, like, I think there's at least somewhat of a, like, every blind person I know has a little bit of like anti-establishment bent, whereas he felt very like fall in line. I'm like, I don't know a single blind person like that, so I don't know, but maybe they're out there. But it seemed weird to me that he was so against them like stealing things, but in a way that wasn't like all. I mean, it was sort of. I mean, was it thought out? He was just kind of like, that's bad. I don't know. He had like an immoral objection.
Yeah, they want to have that one character who starts out as the moral compass and is like, no, we shouldn't do this because it's wrong. But then they win him over.
Right. Yeah, so that you can kind of like, as an audience surrogate, which I guess is cool, that's the blind character, but it's wrong. I was never, as an audience member and a blind person, I was never like, wow, these people shouldn't be robbing a museum. It's wrong to like steal something from rich people who are discriminating against you. That was never my thought. So I don't know why you needed to do that. But this movie is really like, it could have totally been like a like cripsploitation. I was like trying to figure out what the right term is, and I don't think there is a term, so I'm doing it now. Cripsploitation, I think, is the best we're gonna get. But I wanted it to be like full on cripsploitation, and it like the idea of the movie could have easily been, but then it like undermined it in some really key ways that made it feel like kind of, it was just kind of disappointing, because it was so close to being like, these disabled people are discriminated against and they get back with ingenuity, but in the end it's like, no, disabled people still don't know what they're doing and are still,
right, because you have, I mean, spoilers for this movie that came out in 1973, and they successfully end up pulling off the heist. But then the next day, literally the security guard, the officer on duty who knows Vic, comes to their apartment and is like, so you did this, and this, you messed up here and here. And, you should just give everything back. Like, you proved your point, say you're sorry, give everything back. And I think they end up mailing the stones in the end, back to the museum. And, the officer ends up giving Vic, or loaning Vic, the $5,000 to keep his laundromat.
Which is like not the only problem that exists for these three guys. They have other problems.
Yeah.
That does not solve all their problems.
I'm like, okay, great. So Vic has his laundromat back. That's great. Are the other two dudes going to work there?
Right, exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly. It's not, like, you do not need that many people to work at a laundromat. That's not enough money for it to, like, you can't support the other two guys that way. Like, it doesn't make sense that that's such a small thing, whereas, like, they needed more finances, and they're not going to be able to, they're still going to be coming up against, even at the laundromat, he's still going to be coming up against a lot of ableism, and he doesn't have a lot of options, and just one loan, and it's like, it's a loan, right? It's still a loan. Or is he given the money? I can't remember.
I don't think it's ever actually specified, but we're inferring that, okay, he's just going to get a loan. He's going to get a loan because he's this able-bodied guy, and he's going to give the money to Vic. Right. But it's kind of implied that if that's what you wanted, why didn't you just ask me? I'm your friend, instead of trying to steal from the museum. And I think because he is Vic's friend, he does give them that chance in the end, instead of just outright reporting them to the police if he knows that it was them who did it.
But it's so patronizing, and at that point I was like, they could have just been like, are you really think people are gonna believe that a bunch of crippled, like, not to use a slur, but it was 1973, so that feels probably like what the dialogue would be. But like, are you gonna really believe that like no one's gonna believe 3 disabled people stole? It's kind of like that Daredevil moment where he's like, you really think they're gonna believe a blind person beat you up? I mean, like, they could have done that. They totally could have done that, and it would have made more sense to me. Like, because it's worth like they steal multiple stones and they're all worth like $4 million or something like that.
Yeah.
It was like, it's an extreme amount of money, and like, so the difference between $5,000 and like $9 million is vast. So I feel like just being like, instead of just being like, oh, okay, well, you're gonna be able to report us, like, they could have just said, no one's going to believe you.
Right.
Which, when you say that 3 disabled people were the ones who stole the gems, no one will believe you. And part of it is he's like, how are you going to sell it on like the black market, because they're going to be looking for it, which is like, yeah, that's a fair critique of their idea, because originally they were teaming up with some criminals, and then again they decided to go by themselves when the criminals were like, hey, you have to show us your plans before you do it. And he's like, I'm not going to show you my plans, you're just going to steal it and do it yourself. So that's why they go independent. But then I'm like, you could probably find some like sketchy place to sell them. You definitely get more than $5,000. Like, even if you don't get the full $9 million, it's not like you're gonna get something way smaller. And like, you could definitely there's still a way to sell them and get more money. And again, like, I think they could have been totally correct by saying like, hey, no one's gonna believe that this is disabled people who did this, and that's enough of a movie logic to me, and I'm the one with the robot brain, and I would be totally fine with that.
Well, I bought the whole thing about, like, so they stole these stones, these diamonds, but how would they get money from them? No one's gonna buy them. They're hot stones.
Yeah.
No. I mean, but I'm like, he says that, and I'm like, you say no one, but I mean, I bet you,
I'm sure
there's someone on the black market who would cut or fence those stones or something. But then again, I don't know. I'm not a criminal, so I'm not an expert in thievery, so I don't know. Maybe they could never sell them, and then what do you do? It's like all these treasure hunting movies and all these movies where people steal stuff from museums or whatever. I'm always thinking, well, what are you going to do with it, though?
Right. But this is always a problem. This is always a movie logic problem. And in this case, it's used to justify why they should just give them back. But like in other times, there's, they cut them or they do something so that they're not traceable, or they just sell them on the black market so that it's like, it's not like an up and up thing where they're going to be traced. So, there's a lot of movie logic ways where you can sell the diamonds, but this movie is like, no, they can't do it. That's enough of a justification to like completely like give up their whole plan. And on top of that, like, they on the TV are like, wow, these are like highly skilled criminals that were able to steal. So they're like, yeah, we're highly skilled criminals. Like, and I was just like, I was like so excited by that. I was like, fuck yeah, you guys did, like, fuck the man. Like, and no one's ever going to believe it's a bunch of disabled people. Like, you could so get away with this. I was really stuck on that. And then like, nope, no, it's just, and on top of that, like, he's just so patronizing. He's like, here's all the dumb things you did, like, like, it was basically just like, you dumb disabled people, you can't do this right, like, a real person like would be able to do it better. It's just so offensive.
It's the thing with the door that's bugging me. He's like, Officer Cooper, when he comes to the apartment, says, oh yeah, you said that the door was unlocked, but I knew that I locked it. I lock that door every night. And I'm like, well, okay, so if you knew that something was up and you knew that something was going on, why the fuck didn't you confront Vic and be like, hey, what's going on here? Like, do we need to talk about something or whatever?
Exactly.
It's like he was almost in on it because he wanted to see if these fellas could actually pull this thing off.
Right. And then it's like, and then he is just like, to teach them a lesson, I get. Like, it's just like, you're the shittiest character here because you're the one who knew about it from the beginning, didn't say anything, and then just waited for it to happen, and then you're the good guy.
And then and then the other thing he says is like, oh, it's fine if you give them back and, you know, say you're sorry, or whatever, everything will be fine. And he didn't, this is never said, but again, as a movie watcher, this is what I inferred, is you'll get away with it, and if you say you're sorry and everything is fine, because you're disabled people.
Yeah. Well, no, he even says, like, he's like, I talked to the district attorney and I was like, what if some disabled people were confused and accidentally stole precious gems, and then they just, you know, what would they be able to just give them back and say they're sorry and everything be okay? And the district attorney was like, well, I guess in this special circumstance, because if it's an able criminal, it's totally different. Then it would be okay.
A disabled person would never do anything like this.
Right. Well, they were confused because they're stupid. It's kind of like how Helen Keller is, you know, when she talks about socialism, it's just a confused disabled person. It's like the classic ableist thing.
A disabled person would never, ever think to do something like this. And none of us would ever be capable of pulling something like this off. Now, you know, could you and I go to a museum and steal something? I don't know. Probably not. But, you know, these guys are very competent. I mean, and well, I mean, especially with all of Victor's backstory, it's like, and they were in the right place at the right time. I mean, Victor had access to the museum.
They all had expertise that really came in handy. And on top of that, like, they did technically have all abilities, but it like was kind of fun because they had to get creative. Like, if we tried to rob something, we could never see anyone coming. But if we like had other disabled people with different disabilities, then we could, like, you know, there's a lot of like planning where you could do what they did, which is like, okay, this thing, it's going to be helpful to be blind, but this thing you're going to be, because they need to see to like get the diamonds or the gems out of their, because it's like a statue that has gems inside of it, and there's lasers that are it set off an alarm, and so they have to like put smoke so they can see the lasers, but then they also have to be able to, you know, see the lasers. So if it was just blind people, they couldn't pull that off. But that's what's kind of fun about it, is it's like they're all have different disabilities, and we see how both the different disabilities like make them more able to do certain things in certain contexts. And then you also see how certain like people are using the, you know, you see them using their hands or the ability to walk or the ability to see in different situations. So it's kind of like that, like together they're, you know, even more powerful. But at one point
this actually reminds me of this really stupid, again, I don't like Family Guy. I'm not here to endorse that Family Guy is good, but there is this one episode where Peter gets in a fight with Joe, who is the handicapped police officer who uses a wheelchair. And he gets in a fight with Joe, and Joe and all his buddies, who also just happen to be wheelchair users, are like, that's it. And Joe goes, form Kryptron. And they all stack up on top of each other and become this giant, like, man-shaped transformer. It's stupid. It's absolutely insane. But that's kind of sort of what I thought about when I was watching this. Yeah, it's dumb.
But it does have that. Well, I love at one point he's like, well, together we're almost a man or something like that. And I was just like, okay, so we have a 3-headed person. We have 4 working eyes, 4 like hands, 4 working legs. That's not. I mean, that's a pretty weird looking single human being, and I feel like it's more than one human. But sure, whatever.
Well, I mean, my deaf friend and me in college, we used to make the same jokes because she could see and I could hear.
Right. So. It's like, well, that's like when, like, any, like, kind of you included, but any of my friends who have, like, decent, how is your central vision? but like for more tunnel vision than anything else. I'm always like, together we have eyes. Together we can actually see things. Um, but
Yes.
yeah, it's very localized. Usually, if someone has a disability and you stack two people together, that's still mostly just
You're right.
unnecessarily a weird non-human creature with way too many body parts. But I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. The heist was the most fun, the funnest part of this movie.
Yeah.
Watching them actually pull this off.
Yeah.
Because they really do, and it gets hairy for a minute because the Officer Cooper catches on a few times or hears something. And it's always Lester. It's always Lester who gets on the talkie and is like, "Okay, the guard's coming."
Yeah. Well, and also like because he can hear what's going on, but then isn't Lester the one who accidentally makes a noise as well?
Yes, he pulls a fuse wrong or something, and it sparks and makes a noise. Yeah.
Right. Which is, yeah. I mean, it's kind of sad. I was also like, you're talking into walkie-talkie, so that also makes noise, guys. You know that, right? Like that is your voice is also a noise, even if you're whispering. It's got to count for something. I mean, a walkie-talkie seems really dangerous to be in a like heist where you're trying to make no noises at all. But yeah, they even they call the guard from another phone, which is so funny, in the museum to talk to him.
Oh my god.
Which
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
mean,
how does he not hear that it's also in the museum? I mean, I guess it must be a big enough museum, but it's weird. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking they did that to give Vic an alibi or something. I think that's what they.
Well, that's
why they did that.
That's what I was thinking too, because part of it is to distract him because he's catching on to Lester being there, and so but then they call him so that he has to like leave and answer the phone. So it does have that, but then yeah, I wonder if it is like the alibi. That's like when they were talking, I was like, is this so they could have an alibi? Because I guess that would make sense. But then that's one of the things that the security guard is like, I knew like that it was you because you called. Like that was one of his reasons. It's like weird you called on the night of that the gems went missing. So it apparently didn't work as an alibi.
He's like, oh, it's just a coincidence that you happened to call me. Ha ha ha. Yeah, no, that totally didn't work. But I mean, in the heat of the moment, that's what they decided to do.
Yeah, right, because it wasn't like they hadn't planned that, I think. It was just like, oh, this is a way to distract him. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's, I mean, the door thing and the calling, I mean, but it's still, and the other thing he says is there's Braille on the...
Right, he found the Braille codes.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, like, okay... So why, like, how did they put the Braille codes on? Is that what they did together? There was so much stuff, and like, there's no audio descriptions. This is like just record. We could only find it on YouTube. That was the only place it's available. So this is very
right. And I'm pretty sure this was recorded off of TV and then digitally transferred.
Yeah, definitely.
Onto from a VHS.
Even at the end, the credits, they're like talking about what's coming up next.
Yes. Well, and there's commercial fade outs, but then the just skips to the movie, and I'm like, oh, obviously they stopped recording. And then I had a VHS player, or my family did. I used to do this all the time. I'd record stuff from TV.
Yeah, they're very like abrupt of like, oh, I stopped. Okay, we're back. It's like a weird kind of, yeah. So it's definitely didn't have audio descriptions, but all of the heist is like pretty, like no one's describing what's going on for the most part, which is like this blind guy is like, really, like, this is not great for a blind person when no one's, like, describing what's happening. At one point, he goes downstairs that he's never been down, and he doesn't have a cane, and he's just fine.
Right. In the whole movie, we never see this dude with a cane.
No, we do. We do a couple times at the beginning. It's just not, he just doesn't bring his cane to the heist at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because that would make a super duper amount of noise, but still.
Right.
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, okay, that's really unrealistic.
Yeah, I know. And that he like, and with the staircase, it's like this guy has just started, so he wasn't there when they were casing it, which is like kind of like the blind person should be the one there when you're casing it. That's like, that seems
Hmm.
important that they would at least know the place pretty well, because that's like the most, like, blind people were not good at like, just tell me what it looks like, or like show me the map, or like, you know, like all the
Right,
ways where
right.
people can like get ready to understand the inner workings of a place we don't have access to, so we literally just have to experience it firsthand. So but he's
Hmm.
the one who didn't get to case the joint. He was the one who just like shows up sight unseen, or I guess it's always sight unseen, but like and then he just fucking, like, even though Cliff is technically sort of sight, I mean, he's sort of psych. I guess he is psych hiding, but they can't talk, and it's
Right.
a whole fucking staircase. So, like, how is he telling Lester that it's a staircase? Like, I don't. I guess like you just told him beforehand that there'd be a staircase, but and they're just like just jumping down the stairs. It seems so
Hmm.
scary to me.
Oh yeah, I would be terrified
I
in a
know.
new place. And here's a staircase. You just have to walk down. Okay, bye. Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
it doesn't make any sense. And then like, yeah, and how did, so I guess they like somehow put Braille on the thing, but like,
What I thought was he brought not a diagram, but like he brought the in Braille, like the instructions on how to on which fuses he needed to remove or switch or
oh,
something.
okay. But then why
I'm
didn't
not,
he take
yeah,
that
I'm not sure.
out is
Well,
the
oh,
question.
because he also has to break into a safe too. So he had like he must have had stuff written down about, what combination he needed to use because
Okay. But
he
then,
was also listening to break into the safe.
right, right. Which I was like, yeah, and he's a locksmith. So, I mean,
Hmm.
that makes sense that that would be his whole thing.
Yeah.
But like, why? I guess my confusion is, did he just did he have to leave the Braille book there? Like, what happened?
Yeah, that I thought was a bummer. I honestly think that might have been an honest mistake because Officer Cooper comes down the stairs to the room where he's in and he's got to hide. So
Right.
maybe in a fit of panic or something, he dropped it and just they didn't have time to think about that. They had to get the fuck out of there
I
before they got caught.
I mean, I guess, but it still seems like that would be really top of mind at that point, is to get the like fucking Braille instruct. I mean, like, come on, it doesn't take a genius to be like, this could be traceable. Like, it seems so unlikely he would just completely forget that he had the Braille book there. That would not be as
Hmm.
successful. And also, like, the fucking the on the news, that would make it to the news, I guess, unless the security guard like grabbed it before it was a crime scene or something. Also, that,
Which he probably did if apparently he knew exactly who did it. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, I just, that security guard should have gotten fired. I was like, how is he not the one who gets fired? Because
So,
like, he let a fucking robbery happen. That's on him.
right. So here's what I thought was going to happen. I thought he was going to come through the door. He did exactly what I thought he was going to do for the first like couple of minutes.
Yeah.
He came through the door. He went through the heist. He announced all of the mistakes that they made, and he said that he knew that they had committed the robbery. Okay, cool. What I thought was going to happen was he was going to talk about how he lost his job because of them,
Right.
and he wants in.
Right.
He wants a cut now.
That's what Conrad was saying. He's like, oh, he's gonna want in, and that's like, no, the most
Right.
offensive. Like, because how
No.
could you
Yeah.
possibly guess it would be the most stupid offensive thing? Like, and that they would just be like, yeah, that makes sense. We would rather have $5,000. Like, which, like, yeah, how did the guy not lose his job? I don't fucking understand that. It's like you have a bunch of disabled people that did a robbery that are not going to be the first suspects, and then you have a security
Mhm.
guard who let the fucking, his only job was completely, like, how does that security guard keep his job and he's the hero? Like,
I mean, maybe what we didn't see was he talked to the museum, the uh, the higher up staff, and is like, look, I fucked up, but I can fix it. I know exactly how to fix this. Give me like 24 hours. And this is just a scene that we didn't see. Or again,
yeah.
I'm throwing things in there, but like maybe that happened. He's like, I can get it back to you, in a week or something, or in
Right. And that
24
probably
hours.
was what happened. But then, like, But if I was the one who stole the diamonds, I'd be like, no, you don't. You're not gonna, this is not a win for you. Like, I hold the power here.
No,
you know,
yeah,
I'm the
no.
one with the fucking gems, and that's what you want. Like, I'm not just gonna fucking hand them over unless there's some serious, you know, exchanging here. But, like, probably I would just not hand them over. Be like, okay, cool. You think it's us? Sure. I mean, like, okay.
I mean, I guess he gave Vic a loan, so hooray.
I mean, a loan. Also,
Oh, yeah,
unclear if he has
loan.
to pay it back. Again, I know it's like not stated. It could still be something he has to pay back, and it's a laundromat, not the most lucrative, like, fucking business.
Yeah, no.
The likelihood of him paying it, like, just being in debt is very high. Like, he's just like, you won the ability to be in debt as opposed to $9 million of liquid cash.
Yep. Could have gotten for the diamonds.
You could fucking move to an island, you know, an island nation at that point and be far away from the American criminal justice system. I mean, you don't fucking, you're set at that point. There's no fucking reason for...
Yeah, I mean, until they extradite you, but whatever. Play up your disabled card. Like, play your small violin, you know, how could it have been me, a disabled person?
Exactly.
You know, who took the diamonds.
Right. It makes so much more sense. It's just like, what, like, I was thinking this is, okay, so we have 1973. Isn't this where there's, like, enough exploitation films where, like, are, like, couldn't they have won? Like, is that really, what? Why didn't they win is what I don't understand.
That is a really good question. I mean, it's like they had to have morality at the end. Like, they had to have the moral police come in, the literal moral police come in and be like, yeah, no, you should give it back. You're right. When we're in the midst of, you know, exploitation, black exploitation, all of these, you know, we're going to see these marginalized groups get the upper hand.
Right, exactly.
Kick ass. Granted, I'm not an expert in exploitation films or black exploitation films. I can't say this type of film is a good thing because I haven't seen enough of it to make that conclusion.
Well, I went to film school, so I can.
That's true. That's true. Help us out here. Yeah, I would have preferred to see them win.
Yeah.
This is a fun, made-up story.
Right.
You know, where the little guys beat the big guys. Why can't we just see them win and get everything they wanted?
Yeah, exactly. It was just so, I was like, because I was thinking, like, is this because of the time period? Like, I mean, it's made for TV, so does that mean, like, at that time, maybe made for TV meant that you had more restrictions on, like, on, subversiveness? Because a lot of the blaxploitation stuff you think of as being, like, more within cinema after the Hays Code was gone, you know, and, like, that whole era of like exploitation films in general, but like, so maybe because TV at the time was more censored than film, like now it almost feels like the other way around, but that could explain it.
You're right.
Well,
and you know, they still had I don't think it was as prevalent in the 70s as it was in the 60s or 50s, but they still had, like, you know, Cracked Food presents the family movie or something. So like everything was sponsored by something. So if that sponsor was like, well, this content, I don't know.
The Franklin Museum was the one who sponsored it.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. If we're gonna put our name on this, you know, this has to go a certain way.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
I don't know. We don't know where this movie came from. So.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't seem like it was. I mean, they don't really talk about any brands or anything that much at all. So
right, no. Also, fun fact: there's not a single woman or person of color in this movie.
Yes, that's what Conrad was like. Is there a single woman character? And we were like, well, there is one. There is a scene where we have Lester fucking ice skating somehow brilliantly for no fucking reason as a blind person. I mean, like, we didn't have to go through any ice castle scenarios for him to just be fucking skating his heart away with this blonde woman that they objectify, literally does not get to say a word, and is sight skating with him, but except for she does not seem to be paying any attention and he is leading most of the time, so it's truly inexplicable. just like so weird that is in there.
I completely forgot about her. She was not on my radar at all.
Because she doesn't truly does
funny.
not say a word. Like, he's not even saying a word in that whole scene, because this is when he's being like shut out,
introduced or whatever.
Well, he's being shut out from the plans with the criminals, which it's also like, why did the three of them need to like go meet the criminal together? It's so weird, because it's like he is ice skating, so that's how they are like, oh, we can do this like secret meeting with the criminals, so that but he's the one who loves to ice skate. It like makes no sense at all. It's like, also, again, like, they case the museum without their roommate. It's not like the three of them have to do everything together. It's just that one weird scene where they like, I guess, have an excuse to be at the ice skating rink, but still seems like they could just meet at a cafe or like, if you're gonna meet in public, it's like, does it really matter where you're doing it? Like, it's so weird. It's very weird. But yeah, so we do have a very blonde, very white woman who does not speak a word and is completely the whole thing is completely inexplicable and very confusing why any of it's in the movie. So it's very feminist, actually. I mean, but at least we don't have like a terrible subplot with like a romantic interest. That's the one thing I was like, at least we don't have to like watch some weird romantic interest with like some sexist bullshit. I was just like, I mean, that doesn't excuse it at all, but that's my like positive spin on that there was no women at all, is that we didn't have to watch something dumb and sexist. But yeah. Not that good of a caveat, or not that good of a bright side, but whatever. But yeah, it is, I mean, it does have some of it is about ableism in a genuine way. So you can give it that, but other than that, it's still manages in the end to have a very ableist ending, and it also does not seem to acknowledge, the existence of anyone who is not a white male.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I didn't know what to think when you suggested this, and it was actually kind of a fun little watch. It was silly and goofy and kind of fun, and it has glaring errors in it. But this was one of the few movies that I watched and thought, oh man, I'd like to see a remake of this. Like, I want a slick, like, give me Ocean's 11 with women and people of color and make them disabled. That is what I want. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Give me that.
What I want so bad. No, I think that was like after the movie, my thing was like, I want to make Ocean's. Which was it? Ocean's 9?
It was Ocean's 8. I think it's the one with the ladies.
Okay, yeah. I'm like the numbers back when we would just do franchises with women, and now women have had their day. We're done with that now. It's over.
Right.
But I was like, okay, so I want to make Ocean's 8 with disabled, all disabled characters. That is, yes. We should just say we should do a collab. We should write a spec movie.
A spec scripts?
Yeah.
There you
go. We should spec screenplay just like Ocean's 8 but with disabled people. That's I mean, come on, you gotta love it. I mean, why have we not had cripsploitation also? Like, what the fuck?
I know,
why not?
Right?
Like, there's no good reason.
I want to see some person with like rockets strapped to their wheelchair, and then they like, I don't know, burst through a wall, guns ablazing. Like, give me that. I am not averse to violence. I'll take it.
Well, and also this is like robbery. There's no violence. It's just like, this feels so much like the oppressed getting the upper hand in a way that doesn't hurt anyone, but like the poor people who are getting hurt is like a rich like security company that is fucking full of themselves being like, this is unpenetrable, we're not going to hire a disabled person because we have an unpenetrable system that disabled person designed, but now they're disabled, so we're not going to hire them. And this is the guys that we're supposed to sympathize with in the end. I mean, like, what? Like, you can totally fuck those guys over. No one is sitting there being like, oh, but those poor, like, really shitty ableist chauvinistic like security guard guys that like are fucking just assholes. Like those poor guys, they're getting, now people could see that their security isn't as good as they think it is. like what? Like, come on, guys. But no, it's the disabled people that are the silly dumb ones for thinking they could try to rob something and get away with it.
Right. How dare us do what the able-bodied criminals already do?
Right, exactly. And it makes sense that would just be a confusing. It's like the movie really, in the end, you're like, so the movie thinks that disabled people really couldn't do this and that they would just be confused. Like, it does feel like that. It's such an undermining thing. It sucks. But yeah, who knows if it's TV or if it's disabled. It would be interesting to know exactly why the fucking ending is the way it is, because it could go either way. I could see that it's like just like on a TV movie, was it you weren't allowed to let people get away? But it would be interesting to know if there were other movies around the same time that were made for TV movies where they did get away with it, because that would be a good control to see, like, if that was just what a 73 TV movie, just they couldn't get away with it, or if it's just truly like disabled people can't get away with it and that's actually the reason. But oh, so sad, because I was looking forward to the idea. I was like, this looks really fun. I want to see disabled people like getting away with robbery, and then they just walk you right up to it, and then they take it away. Yep, sucks. So do we? I mean, I feel like it's an hour long, so there's not a million things to say. Well, I mean, I guess we can kind of talk a little bit more just about Lester. I mean, the performance maybe. It's not a great.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great. It's honestly, it's not the best. I was more less like, it was cool. It was cool to have a blind guy because it's like it completed the trifecta. But to be honest, I was much more interested in what Cliff and Vic were doing than I was at all with what Lester was doing.
They're such better characters. It was really frustrating because you could have made a good blind character, but I think especially because he wasn't even in on it from the beginning. Like, it's also like, I don't know, we struggle with isolation and feeling like socially like isolated, and it was really like upsetting to see like, you disabled people, come on, like, you're really still gonna like fucking like ice out the blind person, like that sucks. Like, that's what abled people do.
This is kind of sort of a little bit of a Hollywood / movie TV stereotype, because it's so much easier if someone says, oh, this show needs a disabled person, or this show needs some more disability representation. It's so much easier for them to work with or write about or swallow someone who may be in a wheelchair. Yeah. If you're going to have a disabled person on a show, usually they're in a wheelchair, because all they're doing that's different from quote unquote able-bodied normal people is sitting down. Right.
And it's like very visual, whereas a blind character, you actually have to write a blind character. Whereas you just throw an abled actor in a wheelchair and, oh, look, now it's a disabled character. Perfect. And like, you rarely ever have to think about it until there's like a staircase. And like, usually you think about it because you're like, let's create a problem. And so they can be all sad. Like, let's make them want to dance or some bullshit, so that we can like
Glee.
Fucking Glee.
Fucking Glee. Anyway.
So
we should totally talk about Glee.
Yeah, there is.
Sidebar. Yeah.
We have to get enough listeners to have like a Patreon only bonus episodes where we can talk about non-blind disabled characters and things. But yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right. It's super easy to have the wheelchaired character. Not that like being in a wheelchair is like, if you were doing good writing, you would think about a character more, but it's just so much easier for them to like just like have a visually disabled character. Like, I think about, like how people wonder if they're getting hired because of like who they like, their identity, and like because it's, you want to have a like kind of the classic, you want to have a picture of the diverse workplace, and so that's like something that comes up with like race is, but when it comes up with disability, it's like I think about it and I'm like, that's almost always a wheelchair, because I I don't look like I am as much of my quote unquote minority or whatever, like in a picture, in a way that like you get someone in a wheelchair and you're like, look, we have a disabled person. Whereas like I'm not gonna be with my cane and but I'm still a fucking disabled person. Like, and so there's this idea of like the visual and in cinema especially, it's that visual language of, look, we have diversity, as opposed to like actually trying to represent human beings as a whole and like trying to have real characters. It's just it's a very visual, which, I guess it makes sense. If all they're thinking about is what things look like, then they're not really thinking about blind characters, because that's not what we're thinking about ever. But yeah, it is really, I think you're totally right. And that is also, I think, why it's interesting, because I was thinking, like, we don't have as many blind characters, and like there is like the blind tropes are sort of weird and all over the place. It's like, I feel like, I don't know, it's kind of interesting, but like the blind characters, I mean, after doing this podcast for a while, like, do we even have an overarching like stereotype of what, like, why you have a blind character? It's just kind of a mess, really.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's walking that tightrope of why do you make this character blind? That is a choice. That is a choice that you have to make.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard because it's like, yeah, having a disabled character, writing a disabled character into your script or into whatever, it should be completely normal, and they should just be this character who just happens to be disabled.
Right.
But,
like, just you're making a movie about people, and it just turns out that we are also people, so we could just as likely be in a movie as anyone else.
Right. Well, it's like this Christmas rom-com called Christmas Ever After, and it stars Ali Stroker, who's amazing, who's this amazing actor singer who uses a wheelchair. She just got a Tony for her performance in Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
And I think she is one of the first disabled folks to win one, which is super cool. She's the very first person in a wheelchair to win a Tony. Yeah. So there's this movie, and the lady who wrote the script was like, yeah, and then we held auditions, and you know what? Allie came in and she did the best, so we cast her. This part was not written exclusively to be a disabled person. However, she's an amazing actor, and so yeah, we cast her in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's the story is not about being disabled. So, yeah.
Does it feel kind of like, because I think about like when you do like colorblind casting, and sometimes what you get is just, oh, look, there's black actors playing what seems to just be white characters. Like, there's nothing to say that these characters, like, not in like a problematic way, but it just seems so whitewashed that it's kind of like this bizarro world where it's like, this just seems like it's written by a white person, and so it doesn't feel great. Like, like there's that weird thing, and so I do worry about like that happening with like, what I don't know what you would call it, but like disabled, not blind casting. That you would have, this person just happens to be disabled, but then you would still have abled characters, so they wouldn't always necessarily have the like same, they wouldn't always feel very genuine in the same way that like, if a disabled character was being written, I mean, I guess at this point it would have to be just by a disabled person and played by a disabled actor.
Hard. It's hard. It's two sides of this really weird coin. Because yes, I want more stories about and for and by disabled folks and they have disabled people playing those roles. But I also want just, run-of-the-mill dumb sitcoms that have a character that's disabled, and they were cast because they were funny, or whatever, they just happen to be blind or in a wheelchair or have prosthetics or whatever, and that's just them. And it isn't like the story of the week is about them all the time, like having to be about their disability or having to deal with their disability or whatever. I want both of those things.
Yeah.
And it's hard because I don't know which one I want more.
Yeah, but, I mean, I like things that, like, it's hard because you want something that both shows ableism but also shows, like, kind of the ability to get the upper hand as well. Like, because I think there's something about, like, if you're just watching, like, something that's truly about ableism in a way that's, like, so real without, like, the disabled character, like, and then in the end the disabled character is killed or so, like, something where it's just like, oh, that feels horrible and exhausting. But you want something where you depict, like, real ableism, and then there is kind of a feeling of, like, the character is a genuine person, and, like, maybe you also get them getting the upper hand in some ways that maybe aren't always the case, but, like, I don't know, it's just hard. You don't want to, like, you want to watch a real character that feels like you just want to feel represented, and you don't want a character whose world is just, like, so far from your own that it feels disingenuous, like, and you don't want a character that feels so written by an abled person that you can't find yourself in it at all. But, like, I really think what is happening is you need disabled people writing stories, and you need disabled actors playing the characters that are disabled, and that's what you need. And, like, without that, it's never gonna work. And I think that's, like, what we've come to realize about, like with, like, Black people making cinema or Asian American, like, I think that's something that gets talked about in Hollywood. It's like, you just have to do that. You can't have, well, obviously we know you can't have blackface or yellowface, even though we still do cripface,
Yes,
and
all
that
the time.
seems fine
Yeah.
for some fucking reason. But we at least now know, like, even if people don't always listen, that you can't do blackface. It's so offensive. But like,
and yet it's weird because with Cripface, if we didn't have Cripface, we might not have a podcast.
Yeah, no, we would have gone to watch 2 movies maybe. Like, we would have barely watched a single movie. Yeah, I don't think by now we would have been done with every single possible. We would have already. Yeah, no, the podcast would already be over because we would have gone through all of them by now. Because, like, at the rate we're going, like, how many disabled, like, actual blind actors have we had? I think, like, 2?
2 or 3, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we've had documentaries, so that's kind of
Touch of the Light, and then in the Dark. Chloe she's actually visually impaired. Yeah.
So I guess, but then could we not watch it because the main character is blind, but she's not blind as an actor?
That's a good point.
But that's In the Dark is probably rules. So we would be the podcast that watches In the Dark, a bunch of documentaries, and then, like, about 3 films probably throughout history.
Yeah.
So, very depressing. But we also don't like a lot of the things we watch because it feels really unreal and stupid. So.
Right, because these are because these are things that were written way back when, and this was when disabled people just weren't getting the opportunity to act in or to tell their own stories. And
that's
hopefully,
still true, though.
That is still very true. My hope, as we continue doing this and as we go forward, we will see and find more movies that are written by disabled folks and are acted by disabled folks.
Yeah,
it's going to be an unbearably slow process, and it's not fair, and it's crazy that it is taking this long. It's insane, but I think hopefully we will see a change, because there is a change.
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good reasons for blind people to make movies too. So, we should also make them. We have it's almost like we're saying we need blind writers and blind actors, and if only there was, like, a blind person who writes things and a blind actor on this podcast.
Hey.
But yeah, no, I hope so. I think this Lester, the character, and the performance by McCord, what's his first name?
Kent McCord. You were correct, though. His last name is McCord.
Yes. Kent. That makes more sense.
Kent.
I heard Tent. I was like, that's not
Kent.
a name. Kent McCord. Yeah, I think we can cut the Kent McCord. Oh God. Okay. I think that his performance is not very good. He's just so monotone. The other thing that Conrad was pointing out was that he doesn't move at all. He was like, Sky, I've never seen you not move. Like, the amount of movement that this character does in the entire movie, like, I don't think I've ever seen like a minute go by with you doing that, like, without you doing more movement than he is. Like, he's just so still all the time. And like, that is not actually how blind people interact. And I was like, yeah, you're right, that is like the difference between blind actors, is like blind actors actually move around a lot, whereas like sighted actors just stay so fucking still all the time.
Oh yeah, I mean, compare him to, you know, an actual blind person, the main character from Touch of the Light. Dude was always moving.
Yeah,
all the time.
And that's how you know. I was like, oh yeah, that's why I always know. That's why I can always look at a performance and be like, oh, this is like obviously a sighted person versus an actual blind person. Like, I could always tell because they move around, and I've like noticed that they move. You know, move your eyes around, but it's like it's the movement. Like, sighted actors will just like become fucking statues, which makes truly no sense, like, because blind characters need to interact with their surroundings, like, and they need to, like, they're you know, as a blind person, you're understimulated, so you're, like, stimming and, like, making movements even when you know your surroundings, and if you're in a new place, you're trying to understand where you are in space, you're trying to, like, and then, like, it just helps you move your brain, and, like, even like a sighted person is going to be still when they see something, but we don't have any sensory information that needs us to see something. Like, that's, you know, like, we don't have stillness sensory information. Like, even when I hear something, I like move my head to the sound, and I will kind of, and then even when I'm thinking, I might like move my head to different places because I don't need to use my eyes, and like I talk with my hands, and like there's just so many different ways in which you like move your body all the time in a way that like sighted people never do. And so to play a blind character, like, it feels like they're almost more still than the average sighted person, and you're just like, it is exactly, and that he was very much so that like he barely moves, and that's why I'm like, that's why he felt so lost in the movie to me, because he was just so boring, like he was just so monotone also, but like, which I'm like, blind people are so emotive. I feel like this is very unrealistic that he would just be like so monotone.
It's rather sad because he's the blind character, and he's the one character I just didn't really care that much about.
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone relating to him. Like, yeah, you really just don't. He doesn't make a lot of sense. He doesn't behave in a way that feels relatable. He's just absent. It does make you feel like the writers and even the actor did not really have any insight into this character at all. Like, that it was just like a formality almost.
Right. And it's hard because who can I lay there isn't really anyone to necessarily lay all the blame at their feet, because these actors might, you know, they're TV actors, so they might have found out, like, I don't know, a month or less in advance that they were doing this, you know, TV movie. And we know, for actors that have to, you know, to play blind people on TV shows, or for an actor who's playing someone who suddenly goes blind on a TV show, you know, they might have a week to prep.
Right.
You know, we can't all be Audrey Hepburn in Wait Until Dark.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think that's true.
You know, I'm not trying to like excuse his performance. You know, I thought it was very wooden and one note and boring, but I don't know, if you think about where they're at and the circumstances of the thing.
Right. But I mean, like, here's the question, is like, is there a way to just be guided correctly to become to teach an actor at least to do some basic stuff that's going to sell a blind character? Like, do they really need that long to figure it out? Because I feel like sometimes they like make it worse by like, you know, like, if like, because he moves around less than the sighted like characters do. So if he at least was just slightly more, like, how much do you really need that level of training? I mean, obviously just cast a blind person, that's the solution. Right. But like
but then you have to ask yourself, you know, as an actor, maybe that was the choice that this particular actor wanted to make in his performance. That was just his acting choice, because you don't know if he made all those choices or if that was what the director wanted. Right. Because, you know, you have to come with some idea of what you want this character to be. And maybe this actor just thought, okay, this character is really stoic and soft,
but
soft
silenced.
in
He
movement
says
and silent
himself,
and
silenced to a
yeah, yeah.
blind person is what does he say? Now I can't remember the finish. But he's
Oh,
like, it's like murder is not what he says, but it's
something
something
like, yeah,
extreme.
a
Yeah.
killer or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's so like, but I think that's real, but like it goes for us too. Like we talk like by, that's partly because we'll
Hmm.
talk to be like, what's going on? Like,
Yep. Yep.
so
Yep.
the fact that he's so stoic is also like, what? Like, come on, that's not the classic blind. It's just like he just has disappeared into himself, which is like such a
Right.
depressing thing, and it's not seen
Mhm.
as like it's deeply, deeply depressing. Like that's like, what Vladimir from
Oh, from
we've seen so
yeah.
many movies. We really just we have so much of a canon in this podcast now. But like he's just basically trapped within himself, like
Mhm.
but he doesn't need to be. I mean, he has a fucking job, which is like also like, whoa, this guy has a
Right. And
job.
he lives in a house with two disabled roommates. Now,
Right, who get his whole
they're
thing.
not right. They don't have the same disabilities he does, but God, they can relate.
Yeah, they can relate in a lot of ways, so it seems like it shouldn't be that hard to bridge that divide. And the fact that he's so stoic and that he's such a rule follower, like, and that his rule following is just so, like, I don't know, just not really guided by. And it's so funny because then they convince him, he's like, yeah, you're right. We do experience ableism and we do deserve to, like, go against the ableism. And you're like, what? How, if this character is capable of this in general, how is that not his first thought? Like, I don't understand. It's like he just woke up to ableism. He's a blind guy, and we don't know how long he's been blind, but he almost seems like he might have been his whole life because it's super not stated at all. But it's just like, but he's just waking up to ableism now, but like also just like very quickly turns around on the whole stealing things. But it's just like, how did he not originally think like, oh, you're stealing things because as disabled people we're discriminated against, and this would be a way of like reversing the roles? Like, why wasn't that his first thought? Like, if he's capable of thinking that so quickly with their convincing, why did they have to convince him that in the first place? It just doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, but he's yeah, could have had a much better blind character. I think if we were to make this better, definitely they should have gotten away with it and more. First of all, second of all,
absolutely.
Could have had him at the beginning. He could have been the stealing stuff. Like he could have been. They could have been a team of three from the beginning without him having to like join later on. And we could have just had a much more. He just could have been a much more present character that we had just had a better sense of his life and also his skill sets, because I feel like they set up so much of the skill sets of the other two characters. They just didn't have time to do any character development for him. So,
Yeah.
But we had to spend all this time fucking convincing him to be doing it. So we could have spent that time developing his character, but whatever. I don't know. Is there anything else to say before we get into our blindness cutie?
Oh, I think we pretty much covered it for this little movie that was an hour long.
I know, and we've been like talking for probably around that amount of time. I have to zoom in. I think probably more. So I think that's good. Do you want to go first?
Sure. So I am giving this movie. I'm giving this movie a 2100.
Nice.
Yeah. I think if they would have gotten to keep the spoils of their robbery, I might have graded it higher, just because I was all for that and I wanted that to happen. But I've never seen a movie like this.
Yeah.
And I am a little happier to know that this movie exists in the world and it's on YouTube, so anyone can go and watch it.
Yeah.
Absolutely anybody can. And I thank you to the channel or the person who decided that this movie should be transferred from VHS to the internet.
Yes. Because it would be lost otherwise.
Exactly. It would just be a piece of lost media. And now it's on the internet. And is it perfect? Nope. but it was really fun to watch, and it's silly, and I just had a really good time with it. And
Nice.
even though the actor who played Lester, even though the actor, we know his name, even though Kent McCord, his performance wasn't super great, and I didn't really buy his character, I enjoyed watching the other two guys.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
they're more charismatic.
yeah, that kind of made up for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2100.
Nice. I'm gonna give it a 2050. I agree with everything you said, though. I think that, yeah, I mean, first of all, agree with everything you said. I think the 2050 is just solely because of I felt like we really just could have, the blind character I thought got short shrifted in this, considering how we had we had two fun disabled characters, which is like so uncommon in a movie that it was kind of sad to have a blind character, but then for them to be so like, fucking wet blanket boring.
Right. I mean, if you compare his performance in this whole movie to the 3 scenes we get of Blind Al in Deadpool,
Yeah.
Who would you rather hang out with?
Right, we have more of a sense of her somehow than him. So he's just, he felt completely like an afterthought, and we really just, and he's just, a completely confusing and non-existent character, and so that was sad. I also have to, like, I think I really wanted to see a movie that plot-wise, it, to some extent, was the first 50 minutes and then had a completely different ending. I thought the ending really undermined so much of it, and it was really disappointing. Especially, like, an ending that undermines it. It feels the most like, what? Come on! Like, because you're getting into it, and then it's, like, right at the end, they, like, fucking pull the rug out from underneath you, and so that made me really sad. But it did make me think, like, oh yeah, this is like such a good premise, this should be done more. And I really hope that, like, I think you're right, like, about the remake possibility of it. Like, I think if you made it now, and you did a more of a, like, 2021, because that's what year it is now, and while you're hearing this,
Yes, exactly.
it's definitely the year it's being recorded into, but if we did, like, a more 2021 remake of this movie, I think you could, and you got some actual disabled people to write and star in it, you could make a very, very fun movie. I think it would be so much fun, and it would be, we would talk about it like it's The Way He Looks, just to add another reference.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
we would eat that up, and make it women, and non-binary people. That's my other thing to add. I think the bones of this, there's some real potential there, but I feel like it was just, it didn't live up to that potential, but it's also a completely forgotten TV movie. So if someone wants to make something that's sort of similar, no one's gonna be like, this is just a ripoff of Beg, Borrow, or Steal, the made-for-TV movie from 1973. I think you can definitely make somewhat of an homage without anyone even realizing this had been a movie before. And if you just oh my gosh, if you just pitch Ocean's 8 but they're disabled, I mean, there you go, fucking sold right there on the spot.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm giving it above a 2020 for that, for the funness of the plot, and that we had 2 disabled characters out of the 3 that were fun to watch, and that ableism was the villain. That's always fun when it's actually ableism is the villain, not like, oh, I can't see, it's so hard, which is so way too oftenly the villain, I guess, is blindness itself, or disability itself, which is always really stupid to me. So the fact that we actually got to see genuine ableism and discrimination in, like, such a real way was really cool, and surprising. Like, I was not expecting that from something in 1973. Like, it felt like you might have actually known the life of a disabled person, at least to some extent. Like, I mean, I wonder if it was just people coming back from Vietnam War, like, with disabilities, because it seemed weirdly like there was a presence of disability, but maybe people coming back from the war were less likely to be blind than they were other disabilities, so maybe that's why we had slightly more, like, realistic characters for the other two disabilities. That's just me totally speculating 100%, but it did feel like kind of like disabled veterans coming back from the Vietnam War had somewhat of a presence in the movie, so it seemed like that was probably on the writers' minds, at least to some extent. But yeah, I think we could definitely, it definitely has a good good idea for a movie, guys. We just need to make a better one at some point.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's that. There you go. That's beg, borrow, or steal. Gotta love weird punctuation in a movie title. So that the last thing that we have is what we were blindsided by this week.
Right.
Melissa, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I'm happy to report that even though my blind aside last week, or what I was blindsided by, was positive and negative, this one is only positive. I watched the other movie that I wanted to watch when they came out on Christmas. I didn't end up watching either one of them on Christmas, but I am so happy to report that Soul, that is what I'm recommending, the new Pixar movie, is it's a masterpiece. It is incredible. It's so good. It's the first Pixar movie. Okay, I can't say the first Pixar movie, but there's no white people in this movie.
Nice.
Which is super cool. It's amazing. I think the vocal performances are incredible. I think Jamie Foxx does an amazing job as Joe, as the main character, and Tina Fey is awesome as number 22 as the soul. Basically, and this is huge, not a spoiler. The premise is Joe Gardner is a music teacher, and he's a jazz musician, an incredible jazz musician, and he just feels like his life just isn't there yet. He hasn't fulfilled his purpose. Right. And he gets this gig to play with this amazing jazz band that he's knows about and has always looked up to. And he's like, yes, I'm going to play with you guys tonight. It's going to be awesome. My life is going to take off. I'm going to be a celebrity. Da 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 da. And he dies.
Oh my gosh.
He lives in New York City, and he isn't watching where he's going, and he falls down a manhole in the middle of the street and dies.
So it's the worst night. That's why blind people are terrified to live in New York City. I mean, I am.
I know, right? Yeah. I know there are people who do it, but yikes. So he basically goes to the afterlife. In this movie, it's called The Great Beyond. And he gets to, he obviously doesn't want to die. He doesn't want to die. So he escapes the Great Beyond and ends up in the Great Before, which is where he meets 22, who is a soul that doesn't want to live yet. She doesn't want to be on Earth yet.
Interesting. Okay.
Or I guess you could say they, because these characters don't really necessarily have gender, which is really cool.
That's cool.
It's beautiful. This movie is amazing, and it's the most adult thing Pixar has ever done. I don't want to say this is not a kid's movie, because you could show it to children and it's fine. But this movie is tackling really adult issues about life and about what your purpose is, and it will make you think. Yeah, and the music is glorious, and the animation is glorious, and oh my god, it's so fucking good. And it's the one movie that my grandma and I got through together, and she actually watched the entire thing and said it was good.
Wow.
My grandma has dementia and has the attention span of a house flea.
Oh.
So for her to sit with me to watch this entire movie and then say it was good was really special.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, I love my grandma. But yeah, it's on Disney Plus, which means it has audio description.
Oh,
Oh
nice.
God.
Be easy to
Yeah,
watch.
just very easy to watch. Just go watch it. Go watch Soul.
That's
You will not
why-
be disappointed.
That's why it's the Tiger King of near the end of the pandemic, because it is so easy to watch if it's on Disney Plus.
Yes, because everything has audio description. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's brilliant. I can't talk more highly about it. I'm not going to talk about the ending because you should just go watch it.
Definitely.
And yeah, it's
we
it's
can
Soul.
spoil Beg, Borrow, or Steal. Let's not spoil Soul.
No, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
spoil Soul. No. But yeah, it's Soul. It's Pixar's latest film. It's streaming on Disney Plus. Make a friend. Go watch it.
Yes.
It's awesome.
Okay, cool. Make a friend, but like also maybe see if someone in your bubble or like someone that you know that may not be in your
Yes,
bubble but
that's-
can send you
that's
your
true.
their password.
Yes.
Don't
Yeah,
just like
you're
go
right, you're right.
try to find new people to be it. Yeah.
No, don't do that.
Or unless you're a healthcare worker and you've already been vaccinated, then do whatever you like because you're invincible.
Oh, I almost forgot. Two things. Two
Okay.
things. Yes, there is actually like one white person in Soul who's actually quite funny. That doesn't matter. The other thing is I would like to make a correction
Okay.
on last podcast. We were talking about Deadpool, and I'm just not a Deadpool expert. And I was like, yeah, I don't remember him being that sexual in the comics. Blah blah blah. So just for funsies, I started reading a Deadpool Spider-Man team up. Which is really fun, and I'm having a really great time. And literally, one of Deadpool's first lines, he and Spider-Man are tied up in such a way that they're facing each other, and they're hanging upside down. And one of Deadpool's first lines is, "Well, stop struggling, Spidey, or I might have to unsheath my katana."
Okay.
I'm awful close to your spider eggs or Spidey eggs, and I'm just like, oh no, I was wrong.
Also, what the hell? What is happening there?
I mean, he had to fake an erection to defeat Dormammu, who is this like interdimensional terror demon guy, and then there's a whole plot and
But
everything.
stop struggling. It's like
I'm having a really good time.
that's not a good way to start a sexual innuendo.
No,
Stop
no,
struggling.
not.
That's not great.
I mean, they were tied up, but yeah, no.
No, only consensual, like Spider-Man, Deadpool fanfic, please.
Right. Well, and unfortunately, Spider-Man definitely did not want to be in that situation. But
No, if you're gonna do fanfic, make him into it. This is my 2 cents here.
well, yeah,
Make
yeah,
Spider-Man
but,
equally into it. As long
But,
as he's
it's
not
okay.
teen Spider-Man, also make him at least over 18. I'm making it
Yeah,
better.
no, yeah, of course, he is in this comic. But yeah, no, it was a whole plot. Like Deadpool set the whole thing up. Anyway, it's really good, and I'm having a lot of fun. And I'm an idiot. I'm not a Deadpool expert, so I take it back. Deadpool is an incredibly sexual being. There, I have said my piece. I'm happy now.
Okay, cool. Thank you for clearing that up even before the episode is aired. So now we just get to wait for the future where people will be like, "What? Deadpool is sexual in the comics?" Okay,
Brilliant.
no, but thank you for clearing that up. That's much appreciated. It's important that we chronicle exactly which superheroes are sexual and in which mediums they are sexual in.
Yes, yeah, we've got a list.
It's important.
Yeah.
So my blindsided thing, the thing I'm blindsided by this week, is a podcast. This is it is a podcast called Food Psych. The host Christy Harrison is a eating disorder coach kind of, but like it's all just about it is an anti-diet podcast and talking about
wow.
Eating disorders and how like a lot about how restricting food can be like from dieting can creates eating disorders, but even like from restricting like the kind of like restricting binging cycles of like diets, and talks about, you know, health at every size and how like fat phobia and the medical establishment and kind of like all the different ways that like diet culture can be problematic, and it's just a kind of a cool podcast to get. It's given me a lot of kind of information because I've been aware of like health at every size for a while, but since it's so not part of the medical establishment or even like culturally, it's so not understood, and there's so much fucking bullshit about dieting and, you know, things against health at every size that I like, even if I've been aware of it, I haven't like I feel very unequipped to talk about it, if that makes sense. And so I think listening to this podcast has been really cool because it's helped me to really better understand kind of how to talk about and you know, health at every size and kind of the reasons behind it. And because I will just get into discussions with people where I'm like, I know this feels wrong, but I don't know how to like talk about it. So it's definitely helped me. And I just think it's really cool to have that because it is something that is so prevalent, and it's like it kind of feels akin to ableism in a lot of ways to me. I feel like that like the fat acceptance movement and like disability rights movements I feel like are kind of like spiritual sisters in a way, and so it's a cool podcast, and it's a great kind of introduction into the like anti-dieting, the world of anti-dieting, health at every size, you know, universe, and it's just kind of like a cool thing that's made me really have a better, like, feel more equipped to talk about this stuff, and it's just really great if you're someone who's like starting to become interested in that or have struggled with that, like dieting or eating disorders in the past. It's a really cool resource. So that is called Food Psych. Nice. And it is a podcast that you can check out anywhere on where podcasts are sold.
I just added it into my podcast rotation.
I feel like I have such a good record with like Melissa suggested podcasts, except for Dakota Rig, which you were like, love that podcast. So every time I pick a podcast, it's like, we can be podcast siblings. And I've like tried really hard to mostly pick ones that are hosted by women as well. So that's the thing I've tried to do, which is cool. Go me. But I need to get more non-binary podcasts. So tune in the future for that, hosted by non-binary people. I think we did it. Do we have anything else? Any other business? Do we want to make any corrections to past episodes?
No, I think that was my biggest one.
I
think we did it.
Nice. What are we doing next week? Do you have a pick?
Great. So next week is my week, and I've been searching the interwebs, and I thought it might be fun to do. We've only done Quill, The Life of a Guide Dog. We've only done like one guide dog movie, guide dog specific movie. So I thought it might be fun to do another documentary. So we're watching Pick of the Litter on Netflix. You can stream it on Netflix or Hulu. And this is about guide dogs from their birth to being assigned to blind folks.
That sounds very awesome. I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too.
We'll be.
We're so excited that Netflix started to play it for me. Okay,
Ooh.
Go away, Netflix.
It's like, come on, watch it now. Watch it.
Watch it now, right now. Yeah. So next week we're talking about puppies. We'll be talking about Pick of the Litter.
Awesome. Our theme song. It's by Lucia Fasano. Our YouTube is Citizen White Cane Podcast. Our Twitter is White Cane Pod. Our Facebook and our Instagram are both Citizen White Cane. You can send us an email to citizenwhitecanepod@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voice message, there's a link in the show notes.
Who would be on your disabled heist team?
Yes. And what both disabilities and character details would be for each person.
What cool like heist name would you give yourself?
Ooh.
Like if you were in a wheelchair, would you be like the Wheels or the Bagman or I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
The wheels is the best line I can come up with.
Yeah, if you're blind, the cane man.
Yeah, the cane.
The
There you
cane.
go.
Just all of them are their accessibility device. That's classic. And what like other super fun genre movies could you make into Cripsploitation? Like just all Cripsploitation. Please just send us all your Cripsploitation ideas, and make sure to include your name so we can give credit to you when we collaborate on an amazing movie in the future. And come back next week, where we're gonna like be super cute puppies, pig in the litter, guide dogs. I'm very excited to get puppy with it. And we'll see you then. Bye.
Yes. Bye.
Citizen Viking.
What about getting in? You're not cleared on the museum security list anymore.
I called my ex-boss. He's expecting me.
What about the rope? How are you going to rig up the rope?
Once I shake Alex, I'm home free.
What about me? What am I going to be like in there?
You want to call it off?
Listen, Vic, you're lucky. You're really lucky. Things don't touch you.
Well, Cliff, you've got less to worry about than the next guy. You won't leave any fingerprints.